I'm Jax Mackey. Welcome back. And in this week's video, we're going to see how well a sous vide works in the van. Now, if you're not sure what sous vide is, basically it's an immersion circulator that circulates water at a precise temperature, allowing you to cook food very, very accurately. Now, what I'm going to do today is I've got some gyro meat prepared. I've got some beef and pork mixed with some spices. I got it packaged up in a double packaged in a freezer bag. And what we're going to do is we're going to sous vide this meat at 150 degrees for about 2 hours. Now, what I want to accomplish basically is I want to see how much draw the sous vide really makes, because this is a type of cooking method that I enjoy to do. It's something like reminds me of crock pot cooking, where you can kind of set it and forget it sort of thing. I've used it to cook ribeye roasts, prime rib, all kinds of shrimp and steak and other types of meat and vegetables as well. So it would make sense to bring this into the van. Now, it doesn't really have that big of a footprint. What it basically is a small device that you put inside of a vessel, attach it to a side of a vessel. And in this case, I've got a large square plastic tub that I fill up with water. It comes with a lid and an insulated jacket to help keep some of the heat in, especially for the longer cooks. And so it doesn't really take up a lot of room, but it does. The detriment that I'm going to probably see with this type of cooking is it does use water. So in a van situation, water is going to be, precious to a degree. So you want to make sure that you're going to have plenty of water, because this isn't water that you're going to reuse for anything. And then, of course, the electricity that it's going to use. So that's really the two big things. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we're going to put some water in the vessel. Now, I've already established that I'm going to need about 5 quarts of water in order to bring it up to my minimum mark here for the unit to work properly. Now, I may or may not have to add water to that, depending, but when we add in the packet of gyro meat, we'll see how well the sous vide performs, because it'll agitate and aerate the water, and then it'll shut off. So we don't want that. So we may have to add more. Okay, now that I've got adequate water in here, and we got the temperature set, we're just going to hit this and turn that on, and the unit is working. So okay, it appears that I don't have enough water in here yet. Now, one of the things we can do two things. We can adjust the base on the unit so that its flow comes out a different port or a different section. All right, so we can turn this because on the bottom here, that's where the water comes out, and depending upon where this is facing on the inside of the vessel. So when we just turn this a quarter of a turn and see exactly where that brings it, and that looks like it's going to work out pretty well. Okay, so we're back up and running, and we're just going to hit the power button, and we can see that the water flow is, and we changed where the direction of the water flow is, and it's not causing any cavitation. So it appears that we'll have enough water in here now. Now, one of the things you have to watch is in a really, really long cook, water will evaporate, and so that'll cause this unit to go down below a minimum, and it will shut off on you. So you want to make sure you do have enough water. If you're land-based, water is really probably not a big issue, but here in a van, we're already at about 1.25 gallons, gallon and a half of water in this particular vessel. Now, we could use a smaller vessel if we have a smaller package, but all right, so now it's not happy. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and put another quart of water in here and see what we've got. So that's going to put us up to about 6 quarts of water currently in this, and we're going to turn this on and let it run, and we'll see exactly what we've got. Now, this is going to be a testing indicator for me and determine how well that this sous vide is going to work out in the van. Number one reason is, 1.5 gallons of water, that's a lot. I mean, I've got a 30-gallon tank, but in order to make this, work, we're going to have to account for that kind of water loss. Now, one of the things we could possibly do is use it for dishwater. All right, so one of the questions that I've got to you guys is, would you use the sous vide water for dishwater? The package of food is going to be inside of a plastic bag. So really, there should be really no contamination into the water. Now, obviously, you're using hot water, generally with soap, and you're putting dirty dishes in the sink. So how would that be any different? Now, it's not like it's, you know, water from, you know, days old or whatever. So I'm going to add soap to this. Would it be okay? Would you guys be grossed out about that? Would that be something that you could see happening? This leftover sous vide water, 150 degree water, using it to wash up your dishes? Yes, no, maybe? Leave a comment below. Okay, so we're heating up. I got it set for 150 degrees. We are currently at 84 degrees, 85 degrees. And if we're looking at our Victron app here, we're running about 1122 watts of power. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good chunk of wattage. Typically, I'm running about 100 watts idle. Under 100 watts, that's refrigerator sort of, and any lights, anything else. I mean, I'm not using a whole lot of power. You know, so judging by this here situation is that we're running about 1,000 watts for this sous vide unit here. I can double check on the website for Anova's website to see exactly what this unit actually draws. Now that's bringing it up to temperature. Now once we get to optimum temperature, it's going to be fluctuating on and off, on and off, on and off. So basically what I've got down here is I've got zero power, or zero, let's have a look. So I've got 5 watts of solar coming in. So I've got nothing coming in for solar. So this is a good test to see how hungry this unit really is. So we go back to the power consumption here and we can watch, and we're down to 95%. Now, I learned over the last weekend's outing that when I brought it down to 80%, it literally only took less than an hour of sunlight to bring it back to 100% battery power. So using this during the day would probably not be a huge detriment, but I definitely want to check out and watch and see how much power this is going to draw on a regular use. Once we get to temperature, we'll see what this drops down to. Right now it's at 1160, 1150 watts. So another thing I want to test out here is the fans that I've got installed in the electrical compartment. Now right now I've got a temperature setting. We've got 63.8 is our ambient temperature in the van, and inside the electrical cabinet's about 74 degrees. Now I'm sure that's probably going to come up a couple of degrees, but I'm going to see if it gets, you know, much higher than that, and then we're going to turn the fans on and we're going to see how cool I can get that, bring that temperature back down just by vacating the air. Right now the fans are off. The little I got a little fans down here that are drawing air out of the cabinet, and then of course the intake is in several spots. I got a vent there, I got a vent on the other end of the cabinet, and on the very end too as well. So we're producing heat from both the inverter, and I've got the computer on, so we're running some power there, producing some heat there. Okay, so we're about 30 minutes into the preheating of the sous vide. And I'm experiencing, I don't know if you can notice that in the background, but the lights are pulsating. I have a sneaking suspicion it's from the sous vide unit because it's coming up to temperature. It's almost at temperature. We're at 146.8 and our set temperature is at 150. So I think it's probably, you know, coming up and, you know, pulsating the power slowly to bring it up to the temperature. That's kind of cool in a sense where, you know, I know it's I know the effect really isn't that great in the situation. We don't want to see lights flashing like that, just the draw. But it's kind of cool to see that happening with the Anova sous vide, is that it's coming to a threshold of temperature and it's slowly bringing it up. So that's a good indicator of possibly how much power we're going to be gathering. Now, the other thing that I noticed here too as well is our current temperature in the cabinet space has gone up considerably. We're at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So that inverter charger is putting out some heat. So we're getting close to our temperature, so we'll see how it goes from here. All right, so you can see the power consumption is throttling. (388 watts to say 900 watts, 1000 watts. So that's what we're seeing, the lights flickering. Okay, so we're up to 150 degrees. It took probably, I don't know, 30 minutes, 35 or so minutes to bring the water temperature from about 60 degrees up to 150 degrees. And according to the Victron app, it's we're at about 81% on my battery. So about 20% of my 400 amp hours it has taken to come up to temperature. Now, do we have enough battery power to make it 2 hours for this cook time? I don't know. We're gonna find out and see. Okay, so I got about 2 pounds of gyro meat here, mixed up and prepared, ready. It's double bagged in a Ziploc. This just pretty much just goes in right in the water, and that's it. Okay, so I went ahead and put the cover on, and what this is going to do is it's going to help keep the heat in. It's as well as help prevent the water from evaporating over time. I do have this neoprene insulated cover on this, and that also helps keep the heat in as well, especially for long cooks. And what benefit with the cover is I can just hook this plastic Ziploc bag up over the edge and lock it right in place, so that way I have no fear that this seal is going to leak any water. If there's going to be any water leakage, it's going to be in the seams of the bag itself. This is why one of the reasons why I recommend using heavy duty bags. The use of vacuum bags is really good because the vacuum bags are generally really tough, and they won't leak unless you've got a bad seal. That happens too. But generally the thing about long cook times is that the whatever seal is used to seal the Ziploc bags isn't as tough as a vacuum bag would be. So on the super long cooks, I've done 12 and 24, 36 hour sous vides before. This is only going to be a couple hours, so it's not going to be that big of a deal, but heavy duty Ziploc bags is definitely recommended. All right, so I've got the sous vide is stabilized temperature wise, and it's throttling to keep the temperature. You can tell I just talked about the lights flickering on and off here, so it's throttling the watts it needs to keep that at temperature. And with that said, my temperature in the cabinet space has seemed to have maxed out. We've got 79 degrees Fahrenheit in the cabinet space and 64 degrees inside the van. Now that temperature went up just a fuzz because, well, we've got a sous vide going on here. We got 150 degrees temperature, so that's emanating. Of course, I'm in here, and also, of course, the computer and the Victron inverter charger is working as well. But we're not drawing any heat yet. But what we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and turn on this fan, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go full blast with the fan so that it's running. And we're going to be drawing out warm air from that cabinet space, and we're going to see exactly how quickly we can vacate that temperature. Now, current time, and I should point this out, is 6:51. So we'll check back in about 10 minutes, and we'll see exactly what we've got and see if this has gone down any. All right, well, an update on the cabinet space temperature after 40 minutes of cooling. with the little computer fans, CPU fans. We're down to 73 Fahrenheit. We're about an hour down in the cook time. It's a 2-hour cook at 150 degrees with the sous vide. And after 1 hour, we're at 73%. That's 73% of 400 amp hours of lithium batteries. Now, it took about 30-40 minutes. I should have done a better job of timing that, but 30 or 40 minutes to bring 60 degree water up to 150 degrees. And then we're again into an hour into a 2-hour 150 degree cook. So the sous vide machine is, is pulsating power as it's needed to keep and maintain 150 degrees. So the power consumption has dropped significantly, in my opinion, from when it first was on, because it was, constantly pulling 1,000 watts. So now it's not pulling 1,000, it's pulling between 3 and 800-900, up and down. So it's pretty cool. And of course, I might as well give an update on our temperature over here. We're at 72 degrees, which I think the last time I checked it was at 73. Let me look at what I wrote down. Yeah, it was 73, so it's actually dropped another degree, so that's reassuring as well. All right, so it's been 2 hours. We've got the gyro meat in the sous vide at 150 degrees. It's been in there for 2 hours, so we're ready to pull that out. Just a quick look at the Victron app, and we're at 67% of our battery bank of 400 amp hours. So interesting. I mean, we had a preheat temperature for about 30 or 40 minutes, and then 2 hours of maintaining 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and so then that worked out pretty good. And then also to finish out the this little clip here is to say that our ambient temperature is 64 degrees and our electrical cabinet is at 69 degrees Fahrenheit. So the fans are working well. We used a considerable bunch of power. I mean, 67%, that's, we use quite a bit. But that's okay, because I feel that our solar is going to kick in the morning, and we'll top that up pretty quickly. So as I was saying earlier, so this water was brought up to 150 degrees according to the sous vide instrument there. But what do we do with this water now? I mean, as a van lifer, why couldn't I use that for gray water, washing my dishes? Unless the bag were to rupture and the contents of what's in the bag goes into the water and sort of wholly contaminates it, then I probably wouldn't use it. But it's considered gray water now, and you wash your dirty dishes in the same water. If your plates are filled, you don't pre-wash your plates before you wash them, sort of thing. So I don't think there's anything wrong with using this water, and it's clean. You can see some debris at the bottom, which is the calcium from my water. But as you can see, my water here, looking at like 141 degrees. So I mean, that would be outstanding for washing dishes. At the end of the day, I probably would. I wouldn't throw that water away without actually, putting some use to it, because it was like 1.5 gallons of water. And in terms of, trying to conserve water for van life, this is obviously, if you don't have a lot of water in your van, if you don't have a lot of van storage for capacity for water, then this probably isn't going to work for you. But I've got a 30-gallon tank, and I think that if you were to plan your meal to use a sous vide unit, perhaps you can pick up 1 gallon of water at the store. I don't know what the cost of that is, but pick up some water at the store, 1 gallon of water to kickstart, and then just top up what you need from your own. That would probably be the best course of action. But I think this is doable. I mean, like I said, 67%. I mean, I went through a lot of battery. I didn't have anything replenishing it. I wasn't plugged in. I didn't have any solar going because it's at night at the moment. So that was really a good test for me to see if this sous vide unit was going to do well. I mean, could I use the sous vide unit in the van? And the answer is yes. Okay, so it's the next morning. A little chilly in here. My temperature is currently 48 degrees. 48 degrees. My disturbing though, it's 57% humidity in here. That's a little high, I think. Our cabinet space is at 49 degrees, so it's you know, what little bit of power it was using overnight. But we got that detail as well. We're currently at 56%. It's 7:30 in the morning, and we're not producing much power either. Whatever, you know, we went from what, 60. We went from 69 to 56% overnight with the, you know, current power usage that we have, and at the moment it's only giving us about 19 or 20 watts. So that's certainly not adequate to charge, because we're producing, or we're using more than that. All right, so it's a little bit after 8 a.m. in the morning, and the sun's just trying to peak over here. Still getting about 38 watts of solar, not very much. So I'll probably give it another half an hour, and we should be making some pretty good sun here, pretty good watts, clear day. All right, so it's about 8:40. We're getting a little bit more sun now. We actually have a positive input of watts into the battery. We're at 56%, and it's going to start going up here pretty quickly. According to the Victron app, I'm positive 80 watts. Basically, we're bringing in 140 watts of solar out of potential 1,000. And it's obviously not very much, you know, right at the minute. But again, the sun is still just peaking. So once it gets a little bit higher in the sky here, we'll be able to start stacking the watts up here and charging these batteries back up, and we'll kind of, you know, eyeball and see exactly how long it's going to take. I don't suspect it's going to take very long. And it sort of just dawned on me why the humidity level is so high in here. I mentioned earlier that the humidity was like at 57%. The sous vide is basically you're heating water and it's evaporating, so of course the humidity level is going to go up. And I had all the doors closed, and I had none of the fans on, so I wasn't drawing out anything. Now, I don't currently have the fans on right now, because I'm just testing to see how long the batteries it takes the batteries to replenish. Now, I should probably have the fans on. You know, I mean, that's a general use part of the vehicle, so I mean, I technically should have them on anyways, but I'm going to leave them off for this particular test, just to, you know, basically we've got very little running right now. I just was curious to see how long it would take to top up from such a, you know, a draw 56%. So at any rate, that's my revelation. I know it seems kind of silly that I wouldn't have thought of that before, but you know, it just came to me. It's like, duh, you know, the sous vide is creating moisture, so that's why it's so darn humid in here. All right, so literally about 15, maybe 20 minutes have passed since the last clip, and we're at 100% already. We're bringing in, you know, 327 watts of power coming, you know, on top. That's well, that's the excess power. So that's really outstanding. We're bringing in, what's it say here? We're bringing in 390 watts currently. So that's, you know, I got 1,000 watts of solar on the roof. So if it only takes 15 or 20 minutes to recharge batteries from 56%, that's pretty amazing. All right, so I'd say overall this sous vide system was a success in testing in the van. We ultimately dropped down to like 56% on our batteries through the course of the cooking and then the overnight draw. But as soon as the sun came in from like in like 30 minutes, we went from 56% to 100% on our batteries, and it was a nice sunny day, so that's really cool. Now, ultimately, I wouldn't necessarily be using the sous vide cooker at night. Because obviously the power draw is significant. I would much rather do it during the day because I can easily replenish the battery right then and there and not have to worry about it. But it's a neat system, and I'm glad I was able to try it out, and I was glad I was able to see some success with it because I do enjoy sous vide cooking. Now, with that said, now that you've hung around this far, what do you say we get into that gyro? I got some peach flavored yogurt. so much for plain yogurt on my gyro, but we're gonna go ahead and play with that anyways. It's actually pretty damn good. You can hardly tell it's peach. And we're gonna top this off with some feta because why not? All right, guys, that's it for this week. I want to take an opportunity to thank a new patron, Dalton. Thanks for jumping on board. Appreciate the support. And also, I'm going to get into this gyro here. I'm awful hungry, and I do believe we had a very successful test of our sous vide equipment, so that's a really good positive thing too. So, all right, guys, we'll see you next week. Thank you very much for tuning in. Be sure to check out next week's video. And if you like the content, be sure to like and subscribe.